Well, good afternoon, folks. I have to tell you, it has been an absolutely insane morning into the afternoon. And I'm going to say this right off the bat. I do not believe that the enemy wants me to do this broadcast. Okay, I want to make myself very, very clear because we have dealt with lots of opposition going into this broadcast. And so much of what I hope to deal with today, I know comes with a whole bunch of controversy, okay? I know it, and I get it. And I recognize the fact that some people might not like what I have to say, but you have to understand that everything we're dealing with right now is becoming more of a reality than it ever has been. And so what we are going to deal with is we are going to deal with the problem of Islam. We are going to deal with the deception of Islam. We are going to deal with the very thing that so many people seem to be ignoring. And I think that more than ever, we have to recognize it for what it is. We have to understand that what we are dealing with is a literal satanic ploy. We are dealing with a bunch of lies that have been powerfully and uniquely engineered by none other than the devil himself. Now, this is a significant issue for us to bring up because if we do not take the time to tackle this problem, not only will Western civilization stand completely threatened, but the other problem that we will find ourselves being is that we will find ourselves being in a country that is regulated and run by Sharia law. Do not be deceived by the ideal where some people might want to project to you that the core tenet of Islam leaves room for peace as we understand it. When you hear somebody who is an Islamic fundamentalist, and by the way, I do not use the term radical. I like to use the term fundamentalist. I don't even like to use the term extremist. Because I myself am a biblical fundamentalist, and as a result of being a biblical fundamentalist, I live according to my Bible worldview, my biblical worldview. I want to point this out. As a biblical fundamentalist, I believe in the fundamentals of the Bible. If you are an Islamic fundamentalist, then in essence, you believe in what the Quran tells you. You believe in what you've been instructed. This is the core at where it all sits. And if this is an issue that you have a difficult time being able to understand, that becomes fundamentally predicated upon the fact that you do not see the big picture. Because if I believe in the fundamentals of Islam, if I believe in the fundamentals taught to me by the Quran, then I believe in phrases like the one that I oftentimes quote and I have committed to memory because it becomes such an obvious and apparent example of what we are dealing with when it comes to this problem. We cannot ignore this. When we say, وَمَكْرُ مَكْرُ اللَّهُ خَيْرَ الْمَكَرِينَ, this is a very, very important phrase that we find from Surah Al-Imran in the Quran, 354 specifically. Some people say that the literal translation of that phrase is they planned and so Allah planned, but Allah is the best of planners. That is not what it says. What it actually says here is it says they deceived, which is an indirect reference, actually more of a direct reference to the Jews. So Allah deceived, but Allah is the chief of deceivers. That's what it says. This is very, very different. We need to understand this. People don't understand the true sense of the word makr. Makr is not a word that refers to just planning simply and basically. Linguistically, when we refer to the trilateral root, mim kafra, it carries the idea of strategic deceit. It's a concealed act designed to outwit or mislead. I cannot explain more in depth as into why this becomes so important for us to be able to recognize. If you look at one of the most classic Arabic dictionaries, Lisan al-Arab, it actually says that makr is defined as to show something different from what is in the heart. In other words, it's deliberate concealment for manipulative or deceptive purposes. So when the Quran says, وَمَكْرُ مَكْرَ اللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَكَرِينَ, the faithful rendering of that phrase is they deceived and Allah deceived, but Allah is the chief of deceivers. There is no way around it. You cannot call it a planner. You cannot say that this is Allah planning. This is not correct. This is not accurate. Nowhere do we see any of this. Nowhere do we find any of this being justified in the true sense. Folks, I'm telling you right now, Satan is the father of lies. And what we are going to do together is we are going to go through the tactics of the enemy based on what we can see biblically. We are going to deal with those tactics and why they have become a problem. And we are going to look at the parallels that exist between those tactics and the tactics that we see expressed in Islam. Folks, I want to make myself very, very clear. Okay? When we look at English translators of the Quran, they do what everybody else does, who seeks to disguise the true meaning of the Quran in the English language. They would never do such a thing in Arabic. There is no ambiguity in Arabic. But English is a language that they use to deceive, and they have no problem doing it because in their mind, the Quran is manenzil, meaning it comes from Allah. And if that is indeed the case, the only thing that matters to them is what they render in the Arabic language. By the way, I should probably point this because this is very, very important. Everything that I'm talking about here is predicated upon a book that I don't even think has a lot of credibility. And that's going to sound like a harsh statement for me to make, but everybody needs to understand this. Based on the work that I've seen done by scholars like J. Smith and many others, I can tell you that when you look at any tangible extant manuscript of the Quran, none of them come even close to the time of Muhammad's life. Speaking of Muhammad, let me just simply say this. Islam's greatest scholar, one of the most respected men alive right now, who happens to be in Texas, Yasser Qadi. Yasser Qadi actually said this. He made himself clear, folks. He said that he cannot utilize the scholarly tools that he uses in order to establish the validity of the hadith. Its historicity cannot be verified, nor can there be any scholarly tool available to scholars today that would be able to prove that what it says is in essence accurate based on the tools that they oftentimes use to establish these types of things. If that's true, by the way, If Yasser Qadi says what he says and what he says is true, which by the way it is, then that means Muhammad is no longer Muhammad. That means the Muhammad of Islam doesn't even exist. Think about that for a second. That's kind of a big deal. Guys, I want everybody to understand this because I think it's really important. When we look at the claims that are made by Muslims, so many of them believe in their hearts and in their minds that there are certain aspects of Islam that are definitive. Nothing could be further from the truth. Let's talk about Muhammad for just 1 second. This is very important. And the reason why I want to do this is because I feel the need to expose to you what most people will not tell you. 1 second. Here's one thing that has to be understood. First and foremost, I should probably point this out, just a little side note. Only 18% of the Islamic world actually reads Arabic, doesn't even read Arabic, actually speaks Arabic. Many people don't actually even read it. So when we start talking about, Arabic being the language of the Quran and how it's so central to Islam, it must only be central to 18%. But with all that said, in the Quran, you see 4 references to what sounds like Muhammad based on the reading. And Muhammad doesn't even come close to Muhammad. They're both completely different meanings. One is a name, can be used as a title. The other one takes on a completely different connotation. Definitely a title, but a title only fitting for one person. When we talk about Muhammad, we're talking about the blessed one. And back during the time of the writing of the Quran, that person would have been one person and one person only, and that's Christ Jesus. Islam is, in essence, from its core, and we need to understand this, Islam, in essence, from its core, is actually an aberrant teaching that is an offshoot from what Christianity provides. That's why today, when you spend time talking to a lot of people who claim to be Muslims and even refer to themselves as apologists, they will spend more time attacking the Bible than they will defending the Quran, because if they start getting into the weeds of defending the Quran, they will realize they have some serious problems. And it's no small thing either. It's a big deal. And we've got to understand it. By the way, for those of you guys that are kicking off super chats and super stickers, thank you. Keep them up. I will acknowledge them as we get to the end of the show. So we have to think about this for just a second, because even if we assumed that the Quran was what Islam claims it is, which it's not, but let's just say it is, then we have a lot of other issues that we have to tackle here. And if we're going to look at this the way God intended for us to look at this, objectively, through the lens of his scripture, through the lens of truth, then we are going to make some shocking discoveries between what the Bible tells us are the tactics of the enemy and what the known tactics of Islam are, based on what is instructed in areas like the Hadith, in areas like the Quran. It's very important that we understand this. In raw Arabic, there is no ambiguity. This word makr implies deception. It doesn't even imply it. It's on its face. Even when it's attributed to Allah. By the way, if you don't believe me, this becomes far more clear far more clear when you begin to compare it to other sections in the Quran. Go to other Quranic usages of the same word where it's explicitly condemned when done by humans. Think about that for a second. Surah Al-An'am 6:123. Thus have we placed in every city the greatest of its criminals to plot. To plot therein. But they plot not against themselves. Makr. Deception. That's how it's translated, folks. Don't believe the lies of the English translators. Notice what it says. So they plotted. Surah An-Nami 2750. So they plotted a plot. When they say they plotted a plot, that means they deceptively acted. They plotted a plot. Makru, makran. And we plotted a plot. Makarna, makran. While they perceived not. Folks, the structure is deliberate. It's a deliberate structure. It is a literal mirroring. Humans deceive, and Allah responds by deceiving more effectively. When we as believers choose to lie, when we choose to go against God's commands and we walk in deception, God says, I will call that deception out. You are not to do this because I stand for truth. John made that declaration in John 1:1. You read it in the Greek. He said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What he is in essence talking about is the very fact that the living Word of God, who is identified later as Christ, is in essence all that is represented in truth. This is so important. So important. I want everybody to understand this. Because when we talk about the structure that exists within the core of Islam, it is completely biased according to satanic will. We have a theological and moral problem here, folks. If we just look at it from the perspective of what God requires of us, the true and living God, we have to go into deeper discussion. Because if makr means deceit, and it does, then the verse that I presented to you at the beginning, وَمَكْرُ مَكْرَ اللَّهُ وَأَلَّهُ خَيْرَ الْمَكْرِينَ, then in that verse, Allah is presented not merely outsmarting human evil, but as engaging in deception himself, while at the same time claiming to be the best of deceivers. There is, in essence, an unavoidable theological contrast with the biblical revelation of God's character, folks. Passages like Titus chapter 1, verse 2 says that God cannot lie. 2 Timothy 2:13, he cannot deny himself. The very words of God according to the Gospel of John and many other passages. But I'm talking about John 17:17. Makes it clear that the very words of God are described as truth. Let's talk about another interesting word, taqiyya. This is the concept, the mandate in many ways given to Islam concerning lying about many of these things. Let's just talk about that for a second. When we link the principles that I just shared with you in the Quran to this word taqiyya, we begin to see the logic given by Islam naturally emerging. Think about it for a second. And by the way, we haven't even begun yet to talk about the problem that Islam represents with Western civilization. We're going to get into that in a second. We're going to talk about why it's a big deal. We're going to talk about why we must be gravely concerned about Islam. And when you begin to see somebody talking about the fact that Islam is harmless, understand this. Muslims love to exploit the mechanical function of tolerance that we perceive as welcoming in the United States of America in order to bring destruction that will allow them to render full control. It's very important. I think it's critical. And yes, when it comes to the subject of tolerance, you may have gathered by now, I am not a person who would seek to bring people into a saving knowledge of Christ in Islam by simply showing a welcoming mindset as it relates to the condition in which they're in. I'm a father. I have a son. I have 2 daughters. If my little boy is running towards immediate danger, I'm not going to say, oh, honey, come over here. Look at me. I'm in a safe place. Come join me. No, I'm going to say, hey, I don't care if he's spooked. I don't care if he's freaked out. If he's spooked or freaked out, you know what? To God be the glory. At least he's spooked and freaked out alive. I don't want my son being in a situation where he finds himself in a place where he feels maybe a little violated, maybe a little hurt. Look, I don't mind with him being a little hurt in the moment so long as he's alive. The freight train is coming. It requires an aggressive response. You've got to tell people what's happening. I want to make myself clear here. We must take this approach. By the way, Angela, let me just deal with it since we're in the context here, and I'm not going to answer all the questions coming forward. I'll do it at the end, okay? But the question is, I wonder what James thinks of Acts 17 polemics regarding Islam as they constantly speak about Islam concerns and its teaching. I will address that if I have time at the end. I just want you to know that I'm mindful of it because I noticed you asked the question a few times. That can open up a large bit of time that I may not have, so I'm going to do what I can. Very, very interesting. It's actually a good question. It's intelligent, but we need to go back to what I'm dealing with because we're going to run out of time. So, when we talk about this subject of taqiyya, this lying, the logic that comes from this, it naturally emerges. Why? Because if Allah is portrayed as a master deceiver, which he is, in the Quran, and the Quran permits believers, Muslims, to conceal truth for strategic reasons, I already quoted some of those passages, by the way, 328, 16, 106. Then deception isn't merely a defensive tactic, folks. It's theologically sanctioned conduct modeled after Allah himself. Very important to recognize that. Isn't it funny how the devil says that Satan is the father of lies? Think about that. The God of the Bible, the God that we worship, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that God cannot lie. He's the God of revelation. He reveals openly. He calls deception sin. The Allah of Makr, as it's described in the Quran, engages in deception and elevates cunning behavior as a divine attribute, folks. The resulting behavior for Muslims becomes taqiyya. deception becomes not only allowed, but in certain circumstances, commendable and required in what we would refer to as Islamic jurisprudence. That's not a lie, folks. These are things that you have to understand, and if you're going to recognize that, only then must you go back and look at the problem of deception being presented as divine revelation. By the way, let's talk about that for just 1 second, because when we talk about the issue of deception being presented as divine revelation, this is one of the tactics that the enemy himself, Satan, uses. And the paralleling tactic that's being used by Islam is also very clear. Let's talk about it for just a second. I don't have to get into Genesis chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, or even 2 Corinthians chapter 11. 2 Corinthians tells us that Satan disguises as light. He mixes truth with falsehood. He leads mankind away from the true God. I could spend hours talking about what happened in Genesis chapter 3 with the deception. This is the tactic of the enemy. He's very good at deception in many forms. But as a general principle, the paralleling tactic utilized by Islam, fundamentalism, Islamic fundamentalism, claims a later revelation that supersedes God's prior covenant and denies the sonship and the very crucifixion of Christ. By the way, those truths that I've talked about, the sonship, the deity of Christ, the crucifixion of Christ, the burial and resurrection, they are the truths by which salvation comes. Do I have to talk about John 3:16 or 1 John 4? Folks, this is the same deceptive pattern. Islam, just like the devil, recasts divine truth to produce allegiance to a false message. Everybody needs to understand that. Because when they come to you and they make a claim regarding what the Quran might say or what Islam believes, it is fundamentally predicated upon the idea that they have full license to lie to you. Guys, why do you think it's so easy for these college students to run around and saying, free Palestine? And they are part of the trans movement. I don't call them a community. I call them a movement. Like a bowel movement. And I know that sounds harsh. But the just disgusting aspect of where all of this is driving. You take people that are part of this alphabet mafia and you run them down the road. Literally, you run them down the road of all that is. And you put them in the midst of Islam. You think for 1 second Islam will tolerate them? Islam exploits what they call their tolerance in order to eventually run them over. This is such a critical issue. And this is one that is important for us to be able to understand. Very, very important. Folks, here's the second tactic that we see the enemy using on a regular basis, which, by the way, parallels with Islam. Look at the satanic pattern. Just read some of the passages given to us. Look what it happens to say. I'm going to grab my Bible because this one is an important one. This is one that we can't ignore. By the way, God bless you, Roger and John. Thank you for this Bible. Let me go to Isaiah chapter 14. How about we talk a little bit about the tactic and the very core and the heart of the enemy, of Satan? If you want to learn more about that, you can always go to places like Isaiah 14, Ezekiel 28. But look at what it says here. This is super critical. And I want everybody to see this because it's important. Isaiah chapter 14, I'm going to read 3 verses, starting in verse 12. Look at what happens when we see the depiction of the fall of Lucifer. Look what we see worded here. This is incredibly important to understand this, because the parallels between what I'm about to read to you and Islam is staggering. Look at the statements of the enemy. Verse 12. How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations. For you have said in your heart, look at the statements he makes, folks. This is important. I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. He's not messing around. Satan is at the core of setting up the worship of false gods. He himself is the false god that he wants the whole world worshiping. Well, that's just the Old Testament, James. Okay, let's go to the New Testament. Let's look at the New Testament account here. Matthew chapter 4, and there's a million of them that come to my mind. Well, not a million, but you know what I mean. I'm saying that metaphorically, of course. Maybe that would fall in the category of a simile, but you know what I mean. Matthew chapter 4. This is heavy. Look at what the devil does while the Lord is being tempted. This is like, you got to catch the core of this. Look what it says. I'll start actually in verse 8. Again, the devil took him up on an exceedingly high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory, and said unto him, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and do what? Worship me. Now, some of you might say, well, wow, how can Satan give him the world? Well, Satan has the title deed to the earth. He gained that title deed when man fell. Man falling gave that title deed back to Satan. Satan owns it. Jesus didn't come back and argue with him as into whether or not he had ownership of it. Jesus' statement here in Matthew chapter 4 is phenomenal. His response is remarkable. He says, away with you, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship the Lord God, and him only shall you serve. I love that quote, by the way. So let's go over this for a second. If we're looking at parallel tactics in Islam, how about we talk about that for a second? The devil desires worship that rightly belongs to God. That is the core of the spirit of Antichrist. That's what the devil wants. Folks, let me explain the paralleling tactic here. Because just like the devil desires worship that rightly belongs to God, in fundamentalist Islam, Allah is portrayed as distant, unrelational, and unknowable, demanding submission without redemption. And you say, what does that have to do with demanding worship? Well, pay attention to this. You have to sacrifice your children to find favor with Allah. The God of heaven sacrificed his son that he may bring us into favor. The rejection by Islam of the triune nature of God and the denial of Christ's literal work of atonement replace relationship with servitude. That's what Satan does. This is exactly how Islam does this. It literally mirrors Satan's desire for worship. It's a literal mirroring of it, folks. Here's a big one, and this is one that people just don't get. Like, it's so sad, but they just don't see it, and I don't know why they don't see it. Because this is true of Islam, just like it's true of the enemy. Let me read this, because this is so important. The third tactic that the enemy uses, which is in essence very much paralleled by Islam. Why? Because maybe Islam is inspired by the devil himself. Maybe that's the reason why. But the devil loves violence. By the way, I'm limiting this point to just a few comments because, quite frankly, I am completely livid over this particular tactic. It was this particular tactic that took a very dear friend of mine. And God, in his grace and mercy, allowed it for whatever reason. But I hate the tactics of the enemy. And guess what? He hates you. He hates me. Look at what Jesus says in John chapter 8. I'm going to read it because it's heavy. It's an important passage to read. I don't know about you. I love, literally reading from my Bible. It's just, there's just something about holding the pages and looking at the red writing. When it's the words of Jesus, of course. Look at what Jesus says when he addresses the Pharisees. He's talking about the difference between Abraham's seed and Satan's. That's the discussion he's having with them. But look what he says to them. He says, this is John chapter 8, verse 44. He says, you are of your father, the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. So he's going to describe what those desires are. Look what he says. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in truth because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. Wow. Look at what Revelation says. I love the book of Revelation, by the way. I got a book coming out on the book of Revelation here very, very soon. I'm actually going to do 2 books through it. But let's go through Revelation chapter 13. We're going to announce that, by the way, in the next month or so. Revelation chapter 13, I want to read this because this, again, such a powerful picture of the violent tactics of the enemy. The fact that the enemy loves regression into this type of thing. It's amazing how many people call themselves righteous, yet they just love the tactics. Do you know that there are people right now, these leftist fools, who are wearing Halloween costumes depicting the death of Charlie Kirk? Well, I got news for those guys. Charlie became more alive that day than he's ever been alive any moment on this earth. So nice try, Satan. But let me read this, Revelation chapter 13, and I'm going to jump into verse 7. And it says this, it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All who dwell on the earth will worship him whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. Look what it goes on to say. This is heavy. Verse 9, if anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patient and the faith of the saints. By the way, the Bible here is making it very clear what will be the fate of those who continue to allow themselves to be given to the tactics of the enemy, the violent tactics of the enemy. Look at what it goes on to say about what Satan does here. This is heavy. Thank God we won't be alive during this time, at least not alive on this earth. We're going to be alive in eternity, but not on this earth. Look what it says. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all authority of the first beast in his presence. Think about this, guys. Think about this. Look at what happens. We're about to read about the very core of how the mark of the beast takes place. Look at this. He exercises all authority. Verse 13, he performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. You get that? You don't worship the image of the beast, you die. Heavy. He causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except the one who has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who hath understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Our enemy is violent. The Bible substantiates that clearly. The paralleling tactic of Islamic fundamentalism enforces the belief of those fundamentals through jihad. Folks, not just jihad, through their blasphemy laws, the threats of death for apostasy. Let me make myself clear. When we talk about conversion in Islam, conversion is literally demanded, folks. It's demanded under duress. This echoes Satan's method of forcing submission rather than winning hearts through truth. They parallel one another, folks. By the way, I should probably note this because I think it's a very, very important point to bring into fruition. They say Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world, and it is. But the reason why it's the fastest growing religion in the world, by the way, the fastest growing religion in the world should not be conflated with the largest religion in the world. Largest religion is Christianity by far. But the one thing I want everybody to understand here is that Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world because, very important to understand, because of birth. Because of the core foundation of familial expansion through procreation. That's the only reason why Islam is growing at the rate that it's growing. And that's very important for everybody to understand. What's the fourth tactic that the enemy uses that is paralleled perfectly by Islam? Control of knowledge and suppression of truth. Look at what the Bible tells us, 2 Corinthians. I don't even need to open it. I can just simply quote it to you. The God of this world has blinded the minds of them which believe not. That's what 2 Corinthians tells us. Guys, one of the ways that Satan blinds people is through confusion and censorship. It is a foundational tactic that Satan uses. It is perhaps the most foundational tactic that he uses when it comes to deceiving. Guys, in Islam, if you are a fundamentalist, you will restrict scripture, you will restrict Christian teaching, you will restrict free inquiry. That is what they do. They replace education with indoctrination. By the way, that's happening here. We talk to everybody, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to go to college. No, you're actually going to an indoctrination center. Well, I'm sending my kids over to elementary school here around the corner. No, you're sending your kids not to elementary school. You're sending your kids, like literally, you're sending your kids to the devil. Why? Because they're not education centers, they're indoctrination centers. The whole goal of these indoctrination centers that exist are to keep people in spiritual darkness. It's an unmistakable mark of our adversary's work. Folks, I want to make myself very, very clear here. I have a pretty amazing friend in Texas. Actually, a pretty wealthy businessman. Very smart. He's one of the guys that had a big hand in teaching me how to trade. There's something interesting with this guy that I just absolutely love. When I used to listen to him early on, and he's also a pastor, by the way, he brought some points to my attention that I've never forgotten. I've always believed what he told me. I've always believed it. It's always been a foundation, a fundamental. But what he says about the indoctrination of kids through elementary school, junior high, high school, is beautifully insightful. You see, schools were created, as we know them today, to be a tool that trains individuals who go through it to be a slave to the system. Factory workers and so on and so forth. It completely denies the infrastructure of the family enterprise that God intended for each and every single one of us. It brainwashes parents into teaching their children to resetting with every generation. It's broken. It's ugly. This is exactly what the enemy does. This is exactly what Islam does. Now, here's a big one. And folks, I'm going to tell you this right now. I know a lot of people are not going to like this, especially because of what's happening right now in the woke right in our country. Because of the Candace Owens and the Nick Fuentes of the world and the many, many other people who are jumping on that disgusting bandwagon. But perhaps one of the most foundational tactics that the enemy uses is a hatred for Israel and the covenant people, referring to the Jews and Christians. Why? If you're a country or you're an individual, and I want to figure out a way for you to be fast-tracked into cursing, meaning to experience the worst crisis of your life, to be judged, that everything you touch is destroyed, I'm going to get you to hate Israel. If I want to find a fast track to blessing, well, I'm going to love Israel. It's really, really important. You can go to Revelation chapter 12. It gives us deep insight into the hatred that the enemy has for Israel. In Revelation 12, the dragon persecutes the woman. The dragon, of course, being Israel, the woman, or the dragon being the enemy, the devil, the woman being Israel and her seed. Anti-Semitism, or dare I say Jew hatred, is a core manifestation of Satan's literal rage against the God of heaven. We obviously know the paralleling tactic. Islamic fundamentalism fixates on the destruction of Israel, always calling for her annihilation. This kind of hatred that we see constantly being expressed by these people speaks very clearly of what the enemy has always committed to doing. I'm going to bring up a couple of things because I want you to see this live and in living color. And I didn't anticipate doing this, but I'm just going to do it to further show you guys just how bad this problem is within Islam. It's actually sickening. But I want to show it to you because I think it's going to speak volumes as into being able to understand very clearly and very specifically the major problem that we have within Islam. Okay? First and foremost, let me allow you to hear somebody from Islam speaking directly. Okay? I'm going to put up a leader, and this is an important piece of information to know. I am going to put up a leader in Islam. I don't remember if there are subtitles. If there aren't, I'll translate it for you. Speaking about Hamas. He's actually a leader of Hamas. But I'm going to put this up because I want you to hear this. And then I'm going to show you another video that I think is really, really important. Because I want you to see how good the enemy is at doing what he does. Okay? So let's first go through this video. This video is gonna be just a powerful, it's going to draw a powerful picture for you guys. You're going to see this very quickly, how the enemy works and how good he is at this. Okay? This is one of the leaders of Hamas. Unfortunately, he's still on earth. Pretty evil guy, doing evil things. Look at what he says here. And by the way, this is super, super important. I want you guys to understand the deep consequence of his statements and why they are critical. The translation here on this one, now that I know, I forgot. The translation on this is actually very, very good. It's very, very good translation. But listen to what he says, because this is critical for your understanding. This is the leader of Hamas.
إنه هذا المعركة 7 أكتوبر فتحت أفق لموضوع الرؤية السياسية.
What he's saying is we have a new opportunity that's been provided for us by killing all of these innocent Jews. It's a wonderful thing. We now have a new vision for how we're going to politically settle not just Gaza, but how we're going to settle the Palestinian Authority. All Palestinians. He hates, by the way, the PA. But it doesn't matter because him and the PA, just like Iran, just like Hezbollah, just like all of the Islamic Brotherhood, they all hate Israel. Oh, and they hate you. Look what he goes on to say, because he's going to show you the vision, the new vision. We always talk about this, the new Caliphate. No, it isn't. It's Satan's old trick. And you're going to see Satan's old trick right here. Take a look at this.
وهنا يعودون إلى بضاعتهم القديمة حل الدولتين. وهنا أقول مسألتين في حل الدولتين. المسألة الأولى نحن لا نقبل حل الدولتين.
لا حول ولا قوة. This guy, I just want you to know this. He said it. I want nothing to do with the two-state solution. It's as clear as a bell in Arabic. If you're hearing him, that's exactly what he's saying. We want nothing to do with a two-state solution. Not a single thing. Look what he's going to go on to say. By the way, I want you to know, the garbage that he's rattling off, that this guy right here is telling you, is part of the core of their own document that guides them. It is the core of their charter. And what drives the core of their charter is, in essence, the core of Islam's charter, which is the Quran. Again, Allah is the chief of deceivers. Listen to what he goes on to say.
هذا مصطلح مرفوض لأنه معناه أنك أنت لك دولة موعودة ومطلوب أنك أيضا تعترف بالدولة الأخرى اللي هي الكيان الصهيوني.
Okay. Let me give you an easy to understand translation. We want absolutely nothing to do with a two-state solution, because a two-state solution will force us to recognize the Zionist entity known as, or understood to be as, Israel. I would rather sacrifice my family, my children. I'd rather sacrifice my community. I'd rather destroy everybody around us. Everybody. Then have to deal with the fact that Israel is recognized as a Jewish state. How ridiculous is that? It's not ridiculous, it's satanically inspired. This is the mindset. The Quran governs their thinking. Listen to what he continues to say.
تعترف بشرعيته. فهذه مرفوضة. نحن نطلب التحرر، تخلص من الاحتلال، ونريد استقلالنا ودولتنا.
He's just basically saying it's unacceptable. He even recognizes the two-state solution as a two-state delusion. That's what he wants. He wants no thing to do with it. Why do you think they've never made a plan? Why do you think they've never agreed? Why do you think they've broken every single agreement? Because their only solution is a one-state solution, and their one-state solution involves the destruction of all Jewish life. Why? Because the satanic pattern falls under the predication that anti-Semitism is a core manifestation of all that sits within the mind of the devil. Islamic fundamentalism fixates on this destruction. From the river to the sea, he's going to talk about it right now. Hate hearing those words in Arabic, by the way. Hate it. Listen, you Arabic speakers, I'm certain you're understanding this. You get the core of what's being said here. By the way, I will tell you, I will give it to him. He's pretty articulate. It's not like he's finding a loss for words. And he's actually being very honest here, which is kind of interesting. But consider the environment he's in. Consider who he's talking to. Considering the audience.
أنا غير هذا عدوي. أنا غير معني به.
Israel is my enemy. Of course Israel is your enemy because your father is Satan. Israel is your enemy because of your father, the devil. It's that simple. By the way, should we just talk a little bit about America first for just 1 second? I'm huge on America first. I'm all about America first. America is the greatest country in the world. I will always believe that. This republic is worth fighting for. But if you want to put America first, then you will love Israel. If you are an America first person, you will contend for the state of Israel. By the way, I should probably point this out. If you are one of these people that say, I reject Israel in the name of the benefit of America, you're not America first, you're America only. And those who pursue the fundamentalist rhetoric of America only are going to fall to the tactic of that rhetoric. It doesn't work. Absolutely doesn't work. Look what he goes on to say. He's asking, by the way, this guy is, he's not shocked. He's just simply asking for a reiteration of the initial point, probably because he wants to produce a battle cry. I don't know. But look what happens.
دولتنا اللي هي أي دولة؟
فلسطينية.
أي دولة فلسطينية؟
طبعا إحنا بالنسبة لموقف حماس وموقف الشعب الفلسطيني في أغلبيته العظمى خاصة بعد 7 أكتوبر أظن تجدد الحلم والأمل فلسطين من البحر إلى النهر.
The hope and the dreams of the Palestinian people were realized in the death and destruction initiated on October the 7th. Why? Because their very dogma centers around the destruction of all Jewish life. He's saying it. From the river to the sea, and from the north to the south, all of these things have been renewed. There's a fire in them. You know, you would think that people, the Palestinian people, would see something like this and they would go, this is terrible. What a tragedy. What are you guys doing? You're making it so bad for us. Now we're going to suffer. No, they're going, yeah, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. That's what they're doing. They're praising their false god, Allah. It's amazing. You know, I think what's really critical to understand is that so much of even what many of these people say, they don't even understand what they're saying. Like you look at these kids at Columbia that are running down and early in the morning as they're camping out on the grass and they're saying Salatu khairan min an-nawm, Allahu akbar, Muhammad Rasulullah. They don't even know what they're saying. They don't even know what those words mean in Arabic. But they're gonna yell out the worthless chant in order to give themselves to a culture and a world that hates them and wants to destroy them. You think Muslims will allow you to be a homosexual in their country? Are you kidding me? You think they'll allow you to do any of those things? No, you're delusional. There's no way. There's no way that's happening. Good luck. Look what he goes on to say.
من الشمال إلى الجنوب.
He's talking about from the north to the south. In other words, there's not a single part of the world that we do not want that we want the Jews living in. That's in essence what he's saying. That is the core of the representation being made. You can call it whatever you want. That's what's happening.
وهذا حتى كما قلت لك أصبح شعار في الولايات المتحدة وفي العواصم الغربية وعند الجمهور الغربي الأمريكي والغربي.
You hear that? والأمريكي والغربي. He's talking about you, college students. He's talking about the very people that they would kill in a second, in a literal flash, if you were in their country. You pride yourself. You guys walk around, you pride yourself. We have to be good to these people. I think of people like Dave Smith, this comedian who all of a sudden has now become a subject matter expert with respect to the issues related to Israel because it's making him a pretty good dollar to be able to make these representations. The problem is, as intelligent as Dave Smith is and as articulate as he is, and he is both, what he fails to calculate is that the fundamentals of Islam teach the people of Islam a completely different narrative than the one David thinks they're thinking about. Shall we just go over one of them for just 1 second? Because I think it's important. The Quran actually says that if you create mischief in the land, then you are worthy of death. Now, let me back up before I get into that principle, because that principle is an important one. But let's talk about jihad. Let's talk about the Caliphate. Let's talk about all that stuff. The Quran shows us that when a warrior goes to do what he does, in essence, even the taking of his own life for the purpose of taking the others, he is worthy of great reward. And he will be rewarded for those things. That's what they're taught. Now, let's just say that you're not a warrior. Let's just say you're a very wealthy man and you have money to pay for the warrior. The Quran actually tells you that you will get the same reward as the warrior without having impeded any awards that might be received by the warrior himself for his own actions. In other words, you both will get the same rewards, none of which being taken from the other. Very important, by the way. Very important. Here's the thing I want everybody to understand. This is like super critical. Super critical. I want everybody to understand, and this is important, that this also applies in the Islamic world to those who create mischief. So if somebody comes into the land and they create mischief, in most cases, they're worthy of death. Now, there are some rules where they don't kill you. They'll chop hands off and rip tongues out and that kind of nonsense. But for the most part, if you bring disruption to the land, you are worthy of death. By the way, disruption of the land is preaching the gospel. Disruption of the land is questioning Islam. Disruption of the land is questioning whether or not the Quran is benanzal. That's destruction of the land. That's disruption of the land. Now here's where it gets really crazy. If you are directly or indirectly responsible for paying for these people who disrupt the land, you are worthy of the same punishment that the disruptors carry on. Folks, that's why they hate America. They don't hate America because of what happened in Iraq and Kuwait. They don't hate America because of the presence of the base in Qatar. They don't even hate America for being friends with Israel. They hate America because it's a core foundation. They are told to hate America. This is where Dave Smith doesn't get it. He somehow thinks that if he can be aggressive towards the Jewish people, then somehow there can be some element in his self-righteousness to be able to make a presumption concerning what the real matters are. And by the way, I want to make myself clear. I think Dave Smith is a very talented man. I'm not here to put the guy down. I'm not even trying to get into the personal aspect of all of this. I'm simply talking about the credibility of the perspective that he carries. I think these things stand in direct contradiction with one another. This is a very difficult thing to be able to explain to people. And I don't think people understand it at its core. Look at what it goes on to say.
إنه الشعب فلسطين حرة من النهر إلى البحر. هذه شعارات الطلاب الأمريكان وفي العواصم الأوروبية كذلك.
He's right. This is the sayings of the students in America. This is their slogan. This is what they do. Isn't it funny how that works? Isn't it funny how it works that the same killers that took the life of people like Precious Charlie are the ones who would also in a second have their lives taken if they were anywhere near these people? But they're doing it in the name of some kind of social justice? Islam is good at exploiting that. Very, very good, as we'll find out. Look what he goes on to say.
مشروعنا الفلسطيني.
I want to show something else because I think that there's something to contrast this that becomes super critical for us to be able to understand as well. And I really, really, really want you guys to see this because I think it's important. Like, I don't want this to be removed from you. It's really, really important that it not be removed from you. Okay? First and foremost, let me give you a display of what this level of ignorance looks like. You remember how I told you that the enemy is so good at fast-tracking people's curse by teaching them to hate Israel? Let me give you an example of what this looks like. Now, I know that I have featured this woman before. It's a woman. I have a different perspective on her. Oh, don't get me wrong. She's angering in what she does. It literally is angering to see her do what she does. But when I look at her at the core, I think she's a beautiful woman who actually can be articulate and used for the glory of God, but instead she's wrapped up in satanic prowess. Why? Because the enemy is so good at destroying lives, and he destroyed her life by getting her to buy the lie. By the way, it's so interesting to me that she's even wearing articles of clothing that she has no idea what it actually means. No idea what it represents. By the way, it is very interesting when you see the scarf that she's wearing. It primarily symbolizes a culture that actually hates her, even though she's standing up for them. But what's even funnier than that, as she proclaims her hatred for Jews, she's actually wearing a scarf that originated from Jewish culture. I'm not kidding you guys. This stuff, like, I'm not kidding. But this shows how ignorant she is and how good the devil is at deceiving people. Look at what she says here. And this is so unbelievably crazy. So unbelievably crazy.
Yes, everyone, the rumors are true. I am anti-Israel. I am pro-Palestine. And I am 100% 10 toes down anti-Israel. I believe Israel has no right to exist. I believe the United States has no right to exist. I believe every settler colony who has committed genocide against native peoples, against indigenous people, has no right to exist.
First of all, it's hilarious that she's saying this. Israel's not guilty of genocide by any stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, if they were guilty of genocide, then all the Arabs would be gone. That's not the case. They're not even guilty of ethnic cleansing. But she says they are. And her hatred for America? The woke mind virus destroyed her. Look at how pretty she is. She's not an ugly person. But the enemy took something that could have been beautiful and he made it ugly. Listen to her.
I believe in a free Palestine. From the river to the sea.
So it's funny. She hates all countries like America or Israel that are guilty of genocide to indigenous peoples. But she doesn't realize how blind she actually is and how given to a lie she is. She just said it a second ago. Let me rewind this, okay? I just want to rewind this because it's important. Listen to this, okay? Let's rewind it.
Every settler colony who has committed genocide against native peoples, against indigenous people, has no right to exist.
They have no right to exist against indigenous people. Anybody who has committed genocide against indigenous peoples. Listen to what she says in the next line or two.
I believe in a free Palestine. From the river to the sea.
I believe in a free Palestine from the river to the sea. After she just finished saying that nobody has the right to exist that has removed indigenous people through the function of genocide. Yet Israel is indigenous to the land in which they are currently in. They are the indigenous people of the land. Perhaps the most comprehensive story, and I'm telling you it's a comprehensive story of decolonization exists in Israel. So she just finished telling the world that she's all about not allowing anybody to exist who colonizes an area and does it through the mechanism of genocide, yet she's calling for the genocide of an indigenous people group. She doesn't even see it. Boy, is Satan good at what he does, isn't he? Oh, man. Woo! Satan is so good at what he does. Oh, my gosh. My goodness.
I believe one day Palestine will be free. Is this news to anybody? White supremacy destroys for the sake of destruction. Abolition destroys for the sake of creation. We are not the same.
Is it funny how she says white supremacy, but then she says abolition destroys for the sake of creation? Like, does she get it? White supremacy is wrong, and the destructive effect that it can have is absolutely wrong. But what she's referring to as abolition is the active call for the annihilation of anybody who would seem to be outside of what her definition of justice is. So she's saying it's okay to bring violence in the picture. Violence in the picture so long as it brings a just cause. And then she talks about the respect that she has for children. Of course, being an unmarried woman who I believe identifies as a man. I'm almost certain she does. Has no children, doesn't understand what it means to be a mother, but says she's now standing up for children. Listen.
I have an unwavering respect for children, an unwavering love and care and compassion for children.
Does that include Jewish children? Does it include Jewish children? Does it include Arab children? This is a tough one. Does it include white children? I'm just asking for a friend.
Commitment to children and to their freedom, to their learning, to their lives, to sustaining their lives. Y'all are the demons. Y'all are the villains. We've been trying to end y'all. Get free of y'all.
Yes, we're trying to end y'all. We're trying to get free of y'all. Do you understand the power of deception that's being communicated here? The very nature of this deception is expressed through the ignorance in which it propagates. You don't believe me? Why don't we just look at one of our notable leaders here in the United States of America? Take a look at this. This will help to drive the point. Oh, she's a doozy. Listen to the ignorance. Even the stated fact that she provides, she has no foundational basis for being able to explain it. This is the tactic of the enemy. This is exactly how the enemy works. Listen to this.
But I am, of course, the dynamic there in terms of geopolitics and the war in the Middle East is very different than people expressing their First Amendment right to protest.
Well, yes, but I also think that what people are starting to see, at least in the occupation of Palestine, is...
Oh, wow, the occupation of Palestine. I don't even have the time. We should just go back to the other girl that we just saw, because I wanted to make one other comment about the kafiyah that she's wearing. The very kafiyah that she's wearing stands for everything that she claims to be standing up for. I'm just, there we go. All right, let's continue on.
Is just an increasing crisis of humanitarian condition. And that to me is just where I tend to come from on this issue.
You use the term the occupation of Palestine. What did you mean by that?
I think what I meant is like the settlements that are increasing in some of these areas and places where Palestinians are experiencing difficulty in access to their housing and
Do you think you can expand?
That sounds like a whole new level of Kamala Harris or Kamala, whatever you want to say. That's a whole new level of psychobabble. Of like, I don't know what I'm talking about. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
Expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd also just I am not the expert on geopolitics on this issue.
No, come on. How can she not be the expert on geopolitics? She's a government leader who's making all kinds of crazy, wild claims about a region that she knows nothing about by her own admission. Folks, this is how our enemy works. He is a phenomenal deceiver. He is good at what he does for a lot of reasons, and it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And we've got to wake up to recognize what's actually coming. If you don't believe me, let me show you something that will shake you into thinking differently about things. Okay? I'm going to just say this right now, because what you're about to watch is worthy of your attention. It's very disturbing what you're about to watch. Very disturbing. Listen to Amjad, what he says here. The man that's in the full Islamic garb. If this doesn't cause you to wake up, I don't know what will. Look what happens here. Oh. Sorry, had to unmute it. Let's try it one more time.
And how's the campaign to move Britain over to Sharia law coming along?
Well, this is in the hands of God. We do our best to propagate Islam. Well, of course it is. I think many people will see that democracy and freedom is no good for the British, no good for Afghanistan, and in fact, we need an alternative. Unlike man-made law, the Sharia is not something which gives you a right today to take it away tomorrow. It's good in all times and places.
Siri, to make this an issue of freedom and democracy is absurd. Anjum, you haven't had a hair on your body touched by this government or this country. You haven't spent a day in prison. You haven't suffered one bit for your views. You're allowed to sit here right now because of freedom and democracy. In your so-called caliphate, you'd have me killed, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you have me? Am I an apostate that deserves death?
Under your caliphate, he would be executable, would he?
He would be judged by an Islamic judge, and then after that...
You guys get it? Folks, the West is next. The West is next. I have to show you this other video, because this will really drive home my point. And this video is also an eye-opening one. The video that you're going to watch here is actually coming from the Emiratis Minister of Foreign Affairs. And listen to what he says clearly. Again, going right back to the same things that we've been talking about. Listen to how clear he is with respect to the message that he's providing. Oh. It would be much more clear if I unmuted this.
أنت تتحمل مسؤوليتها. And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
I want to go back to the original premise that was driving this whole conversation. And that is the fact that we have a real problem. And the real problem continues to be propagated by that. Another tactic that the enemy used. This is such an important one to understand, and this is critical, and I'm not letting down on this, is that the enemy will mask his pride, his arrogance with piety. Satan's whole downfall was pride. 1 Timothy talks about this. Like, think through that. Ezekiel 28. Remember we talked about Isaiah 14? What about Ezekiel 28? Ezekiel 28 shows it. Look, the paralleling tactic that you will see in Islam is the same thing. Religious pride. They boast in law-keeping. They're very ritualistic. This is true. And by the way, conquest is the biggest part of their rituals. It's a self-righteous abandonment of principles driven by grace. If you look at the behavior of Islam, it's very similar to that of what you saw in the Pharisees during the time of Jesus. But this is a big one. This is one I want you to pay attention to because this is important and so many people don't consider it, but this one is bigger than all the others. Satan wants global domination under a religious political system. Let me say that again. Satan wants global domination under a religious political system. By the way, all political systems are religious. All of them. The question is, what religion do you deploy within the context of the political system that exhumes all the laws that society has in it? I don't have to get into what Daniel 7 says or Revelation 13. The final world empire literally unites all of it together under satanic control. That's why he has a false prophet. The paralleling tactic in Islam is really simple. There is a dream of a caliphate that must be restored. And the new caliphate that they're talking about now is the same old dirty trick of the enemy. One government enforcing religious law over all the nations. That's exactly what they want. Funny how they all work. Notice the parallels between Satan and Islam? Make sense? This is another one. They'll corrupt language. And they'll seek to redefine peace. Isaiah tells us this. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil. When you start talking about Islamic fundamentalists, what do? They brand aggression in the name of some type of holy war. They even say, Bismillah Allah. They refer to submission as peace. That's how they define peace. Oh, we'll have peace if you do what we tell you to do. Submit, there'll be peace. You don't submit, you're going to have war. Bismillah. They redefine moral language, folks. Moral language that can only come from God. And they imitate literally the devil twisting of words to conceal rebellion. Sometimes they don't even conceal it. They just come out right and do it. Here's a big one. You ready for this one? And the next two you're probably not going to really perceive as me even talking about it, but they're both important ones to talk about. This one's an obvious one, but it's one that has to be talked about, right? The persecution of the saints. We see him doing it in Revelation. He's drunken with the blood of the saints. That's the picture of the enemy. What is Islam doing? It's imprisoning believers in Christ. That's exactly what it's doing. The execution in many Islamic governed regions, torture, imprisonment of Christians. It's normal. The hatred of those who follow Christ really, truly identifies just how brutal their persecution, their prosecution is. We see it coming. It's satanically inspired. This is a big one. This is one I want you all to pay attention to. Counterfeit eschatology. 2 Thessalonians talks about it. The coming of the man of sin is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders. Look at what Islamic eschatology does. Islamic eschatology does some pretty ugly things. Go look up Mahdi. Go ahead. He conquers the world. He subdues Christians and Jews until Isa, which of course they redefine as Jesus, believe it or not, returns for the sole purpose of denying his own deity. Oh, Jesus is going to come back and he's going to deny his deity. It's a literal inversion of biblical prophecy. It's completely the opposite. This is the counterfeit tactic that our enemy uses. Guys, this is what happens. This is what happens. I'm going to go through this again because I want you to get it. They deceive, they pose it as revelation. That's what the enemy and Islam does. They do things like counterfeit worship, coercion through fear, blindness to truth, hatred of Israel, all of these things, pride, this one world empire, the redefinition of moral terminology, peace through conquest. It's just terrible, guys. It's terrible. I want to say all of this because I want to point out the fact that the tactics of the enemy are real. They're serious. We cannot lose sight of any of this. It's all happening right in front of us. All right. We have gone over a lot. I'm going to do this really quickly. I am going to go over some of these super chats and super stickers, and thank you guys. And then I'm going to take a couple of questions. Got to respond to my wife here. Let me find them here. By the way, guys, thank you for your support. You guys are truly amazing when you do stuff like this. You're amazing if you don't do stuff like this, but you know what I mean. The super chats and the super stickers are a blessing. They go directly to me and my family. And you guys are just absolutely amazing. Okay. Let's go over some of these. You guys are awesome. By the way, quick note to Dean. I have no problem with you giving your email address or your website or any of that, bro. Obviously. Okay, let's go over some of these. Brad Brunn, you say, so tired of folks griping about the ballroom. I mean, Obama built a basketball court and the only other man who liked hoops was Big Mike. You're going to get me in trouble, Brad, and you're one of my moderators. That's not good. He goes on to say, I heard Kamala say, I'm not finished yet this week. Was she doing an interview or at a bar during last call? Maybe the bar during last call. Maybe she got caught by a camera. I don't know. I hope that's what that is. Brad, you say, I know we don't predict the rapture dates, but do you think the rapture comes before the government shutdown ends? I don't know, bro. Seems like that's going to go on for a while. Pastor Meanie Pants, Dean, you say, I've only seen a wrench mod for 2 weeks and I already misplaced my 10 millimeter. That's hilarious. Badger Girl for God. You say, I think Trump forgot that 48 is less than 70 hours. Oh, that's funny. Or maybe he meant don't. Wait, that was the last guy. I'm getting so confused. You know, it's funny, in all fairness, and I'm not really defending anybody, but the problem with what's happening in the Middle East is so incredibly complicated. There are so many things that are just nuts. Azzy, thank you so much. Ray Goldsboro, man, thank you. By the way, let me read Ray's comment. I'm going to talk about Ray for just a second. I appreciate you, Pastor James, and all you're speaking about regarding Islam and its deceptive ways. Thank you for exposing the enemy's tactics regarding this religion. I want to just say this about Ray. He never asked me to do this. I'm just doing it. If you want world-class plumbing service, contact Ray. He's the guy. Get a hold of Ray Goldsboro. I just did that for free, bro. You're amazing. All right. Let me see if I can find. I'm going to do this because I'm not going to. There's so many questions that already came. I'm going to miss them. I'm going to take the first or second question that comes my way. So please just put question in all caps. Send it my way, and I will seek to answer the question. I only have about a minute and a half, so maybe I'll only take one question. That question that was imposed to me earlier is kind of a nuanced discussion. I would actually have to go through Acts 17. By the way, I will tell you that polemics are important. It is a very important way to deal with the problem of Islam. So I do want to say that, but I do want to say that there is a lot of back and forth as into how that's done. All right. Yeah, are you in danger because of your view, not agreeing with Islam? I get threats pretty regularly. It's a pretty normal thing, believe it or not. It's unfortunate. But, I have a big God, and he's capable of protecting me. And I pray and hope that he'll continue to protect me and my family. But yeah, we get those every now and again. And they're pretty credible, by the way. But, I think the enemy wants to rattle us a little bit and keep us from actually speaking truth. And I think that he creates that level of intimidation so that we won't do those things. Okay, let me see. I guess I'll take one more. Charity, you say, why haven't you said anything about Kushner and Witkoff? What are your thoughts on what they said on 60 Minutes? Watch my video that I did 2 days ago, either 2 or 3 days ago. I talked about it. I think Kushner and Witkoff are completely ignorant of all of the things that we just talked about when it comes to the Islamic fundamentalism. It's sad because they're it's just broken. It's just a broken way of thinking. By the way, Ray, thank you for putting that out. It's Bonanza Plumbing. Bonanza Plumbing. He's a great guy. Ray's an honest man. Love him a lot. He's a special guy. I got to meet him a while ago, and we got to talk for a little bit. He's a very special man. Okay. Christy, you say, I am 15 years old, and I don't understand most of the words you say. You know what, Christy? I promise you that we are going to do a conference for kids your age, and we're going to work it for you guys in a way that it'll be easier to understand. But thank you for watching. I'm super inspired by young people watching, and you are an incredible inspiration. You're amazing. Thank you. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for everything. I love you. You guys are amazing. We've got good things coming pretty soon. I will be releasing my book on Revelation coming up very soon. We've been working on it for years, but we will go into pre-sales sometime next month. I'm very looking forward to that. We're going to get all that promotion material out to you guys. And our new app is also coming out, the James Kaddis one. We're pretty much almost there. So hopefully we'll be in full swing next month. We're excited about everything that's going on. In the meantime, if you want to stay tuned, go to jameskaddis.com, sign up for the mailing address. We will keep you guys aware of things. We're going to start providing for you guys some newsletters based on my videos, as well as a few other things. So we're very much looking forward to it. All right, so with that said, I love you guys. Let's close in prayer, and then we'll wrap it up. Father, I just thank you for these amazing people. I pray that you would bless them immensely and blow their minds with your goodness, Father. Just have your hand upon them. Use them in a mighty way, Lord. Minister to them and touch them and cause them to experience all that you have for them, Lord. You are so good. We love you. We thank you. And we now ask these things in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. I love you guys. God bless you. Keep fighting the good fight.